Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference podcast. And this week we have Stephen Travers. Stephen, how are you?
Yeah, keeping good, John. Yourself?
Good. Excellent, excellent. Um, you're back for 2024.
Yeah, back again for the year of the dragon in Chinese astrology for people who believe in such things.
And what does that mean to you, Stephen?
Well, I'm actually born in the year of the dragon, so
Okay,
yeah.
actually, I don't know what year I was born in, but there's a
Yeah.
piece of research for later. Um, how have you been? You've had a year since last year's conference. So what has been happening for you?
Yeah, well, as per usual, I've been working in my private practice, seeing clients, doing a lot of trainings, introduction talks online, internationally for the havening techniques, and been running trainings as well, the certified international 2-day havening training. So I've done many of them over the last year. And apart from that, just doing some reading, research again in the area of, interestingly, hypnotherapy, some of the neuroscience of what's going on out there. Because when I'm not seeing clients or running trainings, I love learning. So I'm always reading, watching webinars, listening to podcasts in the whole area of psychology, especially in the area of hypnotherapy, influence, persuasion, personal development. I love learning about all that type of stuff.
Right, well, we'll get some tips from you on that now later on as we go through this. Just for people who weren't there last year, do you want to just give a very brief synopsis of how you got to where you are? Because a lot of people will have met you last year, but given that it'll be a larger conference this year, just a very brief.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking the other day, realizing, we're in 2024, and I really got qualified in hypnotherapy or became certified back in around 2004. So I'm doing
Well,
this
20
now,
years.
20 years, yeah. Yeah, so I really started off as well. Like I was just thinking back chronologically. My first 8 years, a lot of people don't know this about me. My first 8 years, I spent like 80% of my clients at the time were for smoking and for weight loss, and some other addiction issues. So I did a huge amount of work in that area, and about 20% was more anxiety, stress, phobias. And then around 2012, I came across havening. And really from then till now, which is, almost 12 years, I've been using havening in combination with hypnosis and NLP. And I noticed a change in the market back then from around 2011, that there was more and more people coming in for anxiety, stress, trauma. And that seems to have been the trend, if you like, over the last decade or two as well. So I'm sure many hypnotherapists and therapists would probably or likely say a similar type thing.
Question then, in that, because if you in the field for 20 years, you've seen transformations, and that's the biggest one from what I taken up from that. Is that because there is more stress or anxiety in amongst the general public, or is it, well, in your opinion, is it because hypnotherapy is just a more acceptable solution for it?
When you look at the research, like there was a study done by the World Happiness or World Happiness Survey was done. They do these almost every year. And they found over the last 20 years, specifically in the most richest countries in the world, that happiness levels have been steadily declining.
Okay.
We're actually more supposedly unhappier than we've ever been before. And on the other hand, rates of anxiety, depression, chronic pain, suicide have been increasing, going the opposite way over the last 20 years. So the question is, why is that? Considering this is happening in the most richest countries, the most affluent, where you would think that should really be the opposite. So my presentation at the conference this year, I'm going to be addressing that question and answering it based on the neuroscience and the many studies that have been happening on why that is the case.
Okay, and this sounds fascinating because I remember Anthony Jackman was talking about something similar about depression rates that don't really exist in third world countries, and it's only as we get more affluent at that kind of those rates
Mm.
kick in. So there is a correlation. So I look forward to you expanding upon that.
Yes. So we're going to be looking at the neuroscience, the neurobiology on that, why that's happening.
Right.
And we're going to then take that information and data, and we're going to use, how do we use that? The question is within hypnotherapy. So I'm going to teach the audience as well very specific protocols they can use within using hypnosis based on that research. So I'm going to teach 3 very specific techniques people can use for unwanted habits, behaviors, and addictions, which are actually a consequence of a lot of those issues like anxiety, stress, depression, unhappiness.
Okay.
Hence why we've addiction rates are also sky high at the moment.
Okay. I mean, there is correlation that I'm aware of between, say, trauma and addiction.
Yes.
Are you saying it goes beyond that, or is that just that people who have a traumatic experience when they're stressed or depressed, they go towards these addictions, or is it stress and depression and anxiety is driving that stuff as well as trauma?
Yes, like from my experience, once again, looking at the research and the data, anxiety-based disorders and many addictions are a consequence of unresolved past trauma and stressful experiences, and someone's inability to deal with it or cope with it. So people, as we know, obviously self-medicate,
Yes.
start overeating, drinking, smoking, cocaine. Social media is a huge one these days. That's another addiction, especially in younger people now.
Yeah.
But there's also a flip side to that, because the question is, well, is addiction itself also a stressor? Can you become traumatized or more traumatized because of an addiction? So we're going to be taking a deep dive into the neurotransmitter dopamine and the vital role that plays in
You really have
addiction.
me intrigued now. You really have me intrigued. Wherever I am that weekend, I'm going to have to make sure I'm in your room.
Yeah, I'm giving some teasers here, some insights. I don't want to, obviously not going to go into a full presentation now, but these are going to be some of the highlights and deep dives I'll be taking in my presentation.
Okay, fantastic. And I know what you've said to me is that a lot of the stuff is when you talk about self-medication, a lot of the stuff is stuff that, I think you said 70% of disease in the world today is down to basically just habits that we can easily discard.
Yeah, the statistics are really stark and are quite serious. The consequences, yeah, 50% of deaths in the world in people under age 50 years of age are caused by addiction.
Right.
And 70% of global deaths are due to diseases caused by modifiable risk factors. The 3 killers being smoking, inactivity, and poor diet.
I'm very quiet at this one. Because at the moment, the way my life is,
Hey, look, but look, everyone has their vices to a degree. But yeah, so the statistics are quite shocking and stark. But there's a big problem out there. And as hypnotherapists, of course, we have the tools that can make a huge difference, as we know.
no, absolutely. And just, I'm linking it actually to something Gary Coles told me, which was that 50% of the Western or of the world population will get some form of cancer, anyone born since the 1960s. So, I mean, I'm wondering, is there a correlation? Is cancer one of those, obviously addictions like smoking is connected to cancer. We know that.
Yeah, it's not my area of specialization, but from what I know about it, from looking at the literature, there's obviously very high correlation with anxiety, stress, trauma. If you look at the ACE studies, adverse childhood experiences, the more of them people have when they're younger, unfortunately, it shows that if they're left unresolved, the higher probability people will have both emotional and physical diseases.
Absolutely
And
does.
then there's the whole area of diet as well, which can be linked to cancer,
Yeah.
eating overly processed foods, Sugar is a big one, white refined sugar. There's a lot of research that shows there's a strong link between that and cancer. Um, yeah, so look, one thing affects the other,
Yeah.
but yeah, the research, the data is there.
Well, I think you could do a day's presentation based on all that, Stephen, because, I mean, health is so important to each and every one of us. And
Yeah,
without our bodies, we can't function. So, it's important that we take care of ourselves. But having the information is the key. I mean, sugar is one that I find really intriguing because diet is, you know, and maybe I'm joining some of the dots here now, but we live in a very fast-paced world. Um,
yeah,
we're commuting, we're going from A to B. We don't always have time, so we're stopping off to grab something. It's normally sugary type stuff that we're getting anyway, because that's the easier stuff that's right in
yeah.
front of you. Um, but yet that's not really promoted as a public health risk, whereas the likes of smoking is, and weight is, but not sugar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does seem to be changing somewhat. I know they brought sugar taxes here in Ireland. I think even the UK as well, maybe the US. And of course, diet drinks are huge
Hmm.
as well. I think people are becoming more and more aware, but I think part of the challenge is there's hidden sugars. Like you buy chicken these days in the supermarket, and like there's brown, it's cooked in or marinated in brown sugar.
Yes.
So there's so much hidden sugar, especially in processed type foods. So it's certainly, yeah, you could do a whole talk in itself, a presentation on sugar alone. I think there's many even books out there about the dangers of over consuming white refined sugar.
But it's really interesting though how you know linking all of that into those addiction issues, and then how hypnotherapy can actually be the part of the solution. And obviously, in your case, havening, because havening is a big part of your practice.
Yeah, so part of what I'm going to be doing in my presentation, I'm going to teach people a few different key protocols to help people overcome addiction and to motivate them to actually stop, based again on hard neuroscience.
Right.
As we know, trauma, unresolved anxiety, stress, people's inability to deal with it can be a big trigger and cause of addiction. And one of my top protocols or methods I use is the havening. So I'm going to do a live demo with a volunteer on the stage, someone with a traumatic memory or just are feeling very stressed, anxious. It can be done content free as well. I don't need all the information. And this year, instead of guiding them through it, I'm going to be doing it on them.
Do it hands-on. Okay.
Right? And I'm going to add in some hypnosis as well, if possible, depending on how the demo goes,
Yeah.
because we can combine both those things really well. And that's really the main things I use is hypnotherapy, havening, and also NLP. A lot of people probably don't know, like I'm a big advocate of NLP. My training originally, before I became a hypnotherapist, was in sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And we learned a huge amount of NLP
Became it.
in
That was
that
the
in that
primary,
in that
first,
industry.
they're still using on us today. Yeah.
They're still using it on us, today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say even the hypnotherapists, if you want to become really even more effective at hypnosis and hypnotherapy, study sales and marketing. There's so much of it
Absolutely.
in there, and it's done so cleverly and covertly.
Absolutely. And Karina McAvoy will be talking about NLP, but mainly in the use for in her practice, how
Yeah.
she uses it with kids and teens. But people will get to see the power of NLP when she gives that. But that would be great, actually, if it was possible to link the two of them together on the demo, because then people will get to see. And do you link them in your practice much, or would you use one technique over the other, or is it different for each type of case that's presenting? Because as we know, everybody's different. Everyone comes with their own.
Yeah, I'm combining it all.
You're combining it all.
And the way I combine is it's like it's understanding the principles and the psychology behind it.
Right.
Like I don't even use hypnotic induction. So I noticed that Carl Smith was saying that a while ago that he doesn't use them anymore. I haven't done them for and like well over a decade because I find I don't need to use them. I just lead into, one thing blends into the other. So I can be doing havening with someone, use planting post-hypnotic suggestions, using visualization techniques, even asking questions, and I'm combining it with the havening touch. So I can be transitioning from different techniques within the actual havening process. And those protocols or methods would be like things like NLP, hypnotic language patterns, visualization techniques, all with the purpose, of course, of getting the best result or outcome for the clients.
So when you're saying you don't use inductions, do people still go into a trance though in your office?
Yeah.
They do. Okay. And that gets back to other conversations about, belief and expectation and whether inductions are necessary at all. But what is hypnosis actually? It's an internal state of focus to a large degree where you bypass your logical thinking. So, but it's understanding principles was the key behind it. That was the real question, rather than, I read A to B. It's understanding the principles, so you can almost have a toolkit that goes, all right, just use that here.
Yeah, if you understand the foundations, why certain things work and don't work, you can then design your own protocols and your own methods, and you can really work more with the actual person or client and the issue that's in front of you. Because I know there's always the argument and debate about scripts as well. And I think scripts can be useful for people at the start, but more so the practice maybe, doing an induction or their hypnotic pattern. Once again, you should understand the principles or why those scripts will be working, and then taking what works from them and making it unique to the person you're working with.
Yeah,
or the issue you're working with.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you raised that, because that's something that many conversations I've had over the last while have been on that of, just people having the skill set that allows them to almost treat a lot of the tools they learn as Lego pieces, so they can just add various pieces to each other, and it doesn't have to follow a set pattern, because that's not about the client then, that's more about the therapist itself, or it's not getting the best result for the client.
Yeah, because as we know, everyone's different, and what might work really well for someone, like doing something like a real positive visualization, which could be in a script, that might not be the best thing for another client. For another person, it could be doing something, an aversion type method, because that's what's driving them. So if you use something that's more aversive or negative, that could be the motivator or the catalyst that produces the change in them. So once again, it's about understanding why those things work and how to use them. And in my talk, will be going into the neuroscience and what the research shows us on positive visualization and negative visualization, and what's actually happening in the brain and the body, and how it influences our behavior and our ability to achieve our goals.
Oh, no, that's going to be fascinating, because I'm aware of a lot of the research, but not the neuroscience. But the evidence-based research that's been done on groups that are individuals that show the power of visualization. But to see the neuroscience behind that now would be quite interesting.
Yeah, and the difference between positive visualization and negative visualization, because you often have this debate sometimes, is, oh, you shouldn't use aversion techniques, or it should always be very positive. So I'm going to lift back the curtain, if you like, in that, and really look at the hard data. And I know from my experience as well of 20 years, what works and what doesn't, but it's really nice to have the science there as well, and also just the experience and to be able to share that with people.
You're also actually highlighting, though, the importance of the conversation at the start, so the information gathering and the pre-talk. You're highlighting the importance of that, so that whether an aversion works better for one person, or it's a positive visualization works best for another. And is that something that you're conscious of that you do, or is it now just an unconscious thing that you just do it as part of your process, and oh, for John, aversion would work better than anything else?
It depends. Like, we know, without going into too much detail, we know that there's certain protocols which we use them, no matter who we use them with, it stacks the deck in our favor.
Right.
So there's a very high probability. But yeah, of course, when you're speaking to someone, you can kind of look at their map, how they think about things, what has worked in the past for them, what hasn't. and just what's driving them as well by asking questions and then utilizing that information within the actual session. And of course, I think a lot of us do that to a degree, but there's depths to doing that as well. Once again, if you understand the principles behind what works, it makes it much easier then to be confident in knowing what you're doing. And of course, when you're feeling confident, the client picks up on that as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of why I don't need to use inductions. You know, doing this 20 years, there's a confidence there, there's a competence, and people pick up on that and they feel it through your body language, through your voice, and just through your experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you raised it, because even, having the pre-talk and the information gathering is not something I've normally actually spoken about to people. It's probably one of the first times it's come up. But it is one of the most important aspects, because it sets the tone and the direction for where your session is going to go. It's taken as a given, but it's not something we've ever really addressed.
It's actually, it's a vital component of what we do a lot of the time when we're doing trauma work and anxiety-based disorder work in havening, because we want to pinpoint, identify the encoding moment or moments, and then aim the havening, if you like, techniques at those specific traumas, or root cause traumas. That's quite a trigger word for a phrase for some people, but I call them root cause traumas, or from a neurobiological perspective, we're looking at the neurobiological roots of what's actually happening in the amygdala to disconnect them and get something called depotentiation.
That's very fair. And when he sees this, he'll probably be laughing, because he was only doing that to you. So thank you. Yeah, but actually the other thing you're pointing out, is, again, by understanding the principles, you can expedite your experience, if you like, because if you understand the principles, you'll see the signs, and by understanding that, you can give that client that better understanding, rather than having to, use an old pattern that doesn't allow you to kind of experience it from the client's perspective, or pick up on those subtle differences that you might see, because you've literally understood. Now, you have the experience and practice behind it, but if someone's is coming into it and they're understanding the difference between principles and between, here's just a form I need you to fill in, and without understanding the significance of a lot of that.
Yeah, look, every session I do or program with clients, obviously there's a structure to it, but it's also different because it has to be. It's very much you're watching what's going on, you're tailoring what's emerging in the session, what's happening. Sometimes people have ab reactions. Sometimes you're just talking to them or asking a question and it triggers something. So you're thinking on your feet, you're figuring things out as you go. Their psychology, their history, they're giving you often vital information at times. And that's what keeps this work fascinating to do. So if you're just doing this, rolling at the same thing over and over and over and over, it can somewhat get a little bit boring per se. But I suppose that depends on your personality and temperament. But for me, a very tailored, personalized approach is the difference that makes the difference.
Well, to be fair, what you're describing is a whole evolution almost within yourself, as you evolved through in the last 20 years. And that comes from that interest and that passion that you have. But it also, like, even learning being open to new tools and techniques that will allow you to work better, such as havening, and that transition from hypnosis to havening to hypnosis and havening. I mean, that shows your passion and your interest in your clients and your ability to learn and just accept new information that works best. It's like you have a curiosity. Is that a good word?
Yes, I have a curiosity, and that's very, very true. And sometimes it's cost me a bit of time and money, because I've gone down a few different rabbit holes over the years with different things. But yeah, I do have a curiosity, and that's what keeps me learning, keep me studying. And it's the old thing, the more you learn, sometimes you realize how much you don't know.
Well, isn't that true? Especially when you go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So we're always expanding and learning, and plus there's always so much new data coming out, especially now with the internet. You can go
Yeah.
online. There's so much information, podcasts, shows, books. There's so much stuff out there, especially in what we do as well. The whole area of psychology, therapy, and then the whole neuroscience has really come on over the last decade as well, where we're getting really key insights on what's actually happening in the brain and the body. And I think that's going to be important for hypnotherapy moving forward, to start utilizing that neuroscience.
Great.
I'd love to see a course someday called the neuroscience of hypnosis or the neuroscience of hypnotherapy that's combining all that data and information with specific hypnotherapy protocols and techniques and principles. I think that'd be an amazing thing to see in the
Well,
future.
if somebody hasn't come up with it, then maybe you might think about it.
Yeah, it's something I'm already doing, so
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
direction I'm just naturally moving towards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, Stephen, you have a busy practice. You're traveling, teaching a lot of the time as well. How do you take care of you? What's your downtime? How do you just chill and mind yourself?
Yeah, well, a big thing I've did since COVID is, and that's the thing about what we do as well, when you're learning so much, especially in the area of health, it starts to point the finger back at you
Yeah.
as well. As
Hence
we
the
when we kind of
question.
go,
It's not one I've asked too much, but
yeah,
yeah,
it's like heal or heal thyself.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, so what I do is I exercise. I've started doing a lot of that over the last few years. I eat as healthy as I can, get good sleep, do the basic stuff, and do what I want to do. Success is different for everyone. It means many different things to different people. So I think that's very important for all of us, is to really find out what's a success and happiness mean to you. So for me, it's really about keeping healthy, exercising, eating healthy. I don't see too many clients every week. Like, a lot of my work now is involved in training,
right.
and then I just love learning and reading as well, and studying in this whole area of psychology. They're kind of the main things I do, and evolving.
Brilliant. Yeah, because it is important. Obviously, that passion and the way that you mind yourself allows you to put yourself back into your trainings, into your learnings, which is just benefiting both your clients and your students.
Yeah, actually, what I'm going to be talking about in my talk, especially around dopamine, when I was discovering this myself and learning about it, it was a game changer for me in terms of my personal life, and in how it helped me to change my behavior, because I could really understand why doing certain things were hindering me as opposed to helping me. So the aim for my talks, well, for the audience, that people will get some personal insights and how they can modify and change their behavior, because knowledge is power,
Absolutely.
especially when you then actually use it.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, knowledge without use isn't really, it's just knowledge for knowledge's
But at
sake.
the same time, you have to have the knowledge,
You have to
because
have knowledge.
sometimes we can't see the woods from the trees. So
Absolutely.
that's where I'm going to be talking about kind of the neuroscience, and join a few dots for people, and hopefully that will give people some aha moments, if you like.
But it sounds like a fascinating talk because Um, I mean, everything that we've talked about, in essence, connects back into things like happiness levels and various, even the parts about minding yourself, your own curiosity, your passion for the job. I'm sure, and I'm not preempting your conclusions, but I'm sure there are all various aspects of it. So I look forward to your talk. It's going to be absolutely. It was a great talk last year, so I'm looking forward to the presentation. And for anyone who didn't see it last year, please go see Stephen. It is, you learn something new, and Stephen's obviously really passionate about what he does. So you're getting it from somebody who's really invested themselves in it. Stephen, very last question for you. What does hypnosis mean to you?
Very simply, hypnosis is the power of suggestion.
Like that.
That's the way I see it. Hypnosis is about the power of suggestion. And as hypnotherapists, we learn how to utilize or use the power of suggestion to make our clients' lives better.
Neurosuggestion. Okay. I've had some really interesting answers, and it's really funny how it's different for each and everybody, and people who practice this all day, every day. It's really, is there any final things you'd like to say to anybody? Any final words for?
Well, I'd like to invite someone, if someone would like the opportunity to do the demonstration with me on stage at the conference this year, especially if there is something there that you'd like to work on. Maybe there is a trauma or some anxiety, or you feel a bit stuck or blocked around something that's causing you distress. Feel very welcome to reach out to me, drop me an email, and I'll be happy to have a chat with you. And yeah, I just like to invite people. There's an opportunity to do the demo.
Great. Okay. Great.
That's really what I'd just like to say at the end.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure, and we're not long to go. It's less than 2 months now at this stage, so yeah, it's getting closer and closer. Really looking forward to your talk, and looking forward to that whole weekend. Last year was fantastic. This year will be even better.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, it'd be great to meet everyone, and there's so many new speakers as well. So it's going to be even bigger this year. So it's
I mean,
it's expanding.
a great weekend of fun, of learning, of connecting, and
Yeah.
of course, yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. So, guys, thank you. And to Stephen, thank you for your time this morning. And wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I wish you an absolutely amazing day. See you in the Clayton Hotel on the 20th and 21st of April in Dublin Airport. And for anyone who hasn't got tickets, it's www.irishhypnotherapyconference.ie. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all in Dublin.